Today's episode of Brews and the Boys is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/brewsandtheboys. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Prepare your ears for a Waffle Butt Media podcast.
Welcome to the Brews and the Boys podcast. We are your neighborhood bar podcast. We drink cold beverages and we talk about America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Every week we will be giving you an in-depth look into everything the Cowboys are doing and what we can expect from the Cowboys. My name is Michael Sizemore. I've been following and writing about the Cowboys for many years and currently contribute to Blogging the Boys. You may follow me on Twitter at Mr. Sizemore and follow the podcast at Brews and the Boys. With me, as always, is my producer and football literate sidekick, Timmy Two-Step.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Who has been relegated to producer duties, and that is it for now. For now, we will talk about this
Maybe
later.
the Eagles won't win next year. Think about
Maybe
that.
they won't win next year, and he'll be brought back. But today, it's going to be a very special show. We're going to be talking with John Williams. John Williams is from Inside the Star DC, does some stuff at Slant Sports, and you can find him at InsideTheStar.com, and you can find him on Twitter at John9Williams. We're going to be talking to him about the Dallas Cowboys salary cap, what cap hell actually means, because there is none. Doesn't even exist. So if you think the Cowboys can't sign whoever they want, then you are out of your mind, because they can do whatever they want. But he does some nice work over at Inside the Star. He talks about the salary cap and what the Cowboys should do in free agency. So we're going to talk to him today, and we're going to get just some information from him on what he believes the Cowboys should do this offseason regarding their free agents, what they should do regarding the salary cap, and how they could get some relief to sign some other guys. So yeah, that's going to be a pretty fun little thing to think about, because the Cowboys every off season, it seems like fans are saying, oh, well, we pay too much on this and we don't have enough money to sign this guy or that guy. No, the Cowboys could, with a few clicks of a pen, can do whatever they want. We told you that last week. They could sign whoever they want. They could make as much room as they want. And John Williams is the perfect guy to go to for that. All right, Brews and the Boys fam, we have John Williams on the line. John is 9 hours ahead of us, guys, so this is going to be interesting. He is in Ethiopia, and we are here in Austin, Texas. So, John, let's go ahead and get down to it. Let's talk about the salary cap work that you've been doing over at InsideTheStar.com. So tell us, first and foremost, let's just break down what kind of work you were doing with the salary cap, and tell us what you found out with the salary cap that they can find over at your website, InsideTheStar.com.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is the podcast debut for me, so...
Well, you're debuting on the Brews and the Boys podcast, where we drink beer in the middle of the day. So, well,
beverages, all sorts of drinks.
Well, hopefully it doesn't go too bad. Mostly I was just really curious about what did the Cowboys salary cap look like heading into the offseason. And we hear a lot of narratives thrown around about cap hell, and they don't have salary cap money, and I just really wanted to get into it and see what does it actually look like. And so we're looking at like a projected salary cap of about $187 million, according to Spotrac, which right now would give Dallas about $19 million in cap space, which is below the league average, about $33 million. But I think that doesn't really tell the whole story, because they've got opportunities to do restructures and do some extensions, the big one especially being Zach Martin. And they're going to have an opportunity to free up some more cap space as they head into free agency and the draft.
Yeah, so do you believe that, as far as the salary cap goes, what do you believe are the most important moves that they must make on the salary cap?
That's a great question that I'm really actually starting to go through. I think what they need to look at is Tyrone Crawford's contract. I mean, he's looking at a cap hit right now at about $9 million, and they can do several different things with him and free up some cap space. Like if they were to restructure his deal, which isn't a great option for somebody who's kind of a role player for the team. But they'd get about $4 million on this year's cap, but then they'd have to push that prorated bonus to next year and then to the 2020 cap. So potentially there could be some dead money on the cap if they decide to release him after next year.
Okay, so if they do mess with Tyron Crawford's cap number this year, you're saying that they do have to spread that over the next 2 years of the deal, which can kind of be dicey unless you believe that he is going to live up to those expectations. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I think, if you expect that he's going to be maybe a 3 to 4 sack guy and play some situational defensive tackle and defensive end for you, then maybe it's not a bad contract. But his cap number is just it's not palatable for most NFL teams. Mm-hmm. I mean, $9 million, you're looking at paying one of the top 5 defensive linemen or top 10 defensive linemen at defensive tackle. But he's not really that guy. And so if you're paying a role player a $9 million cap hit, you have to start asking yourself, is that feasible for your team and for your salary cap moving forward?
So are you saying that it might be best if the Dallas Cowboys kind of consider possibly cutting bait with Tyron Crawford, or are you saying that they should just restructure his deal? How would you handle that?
Yeah, I think releasing him isn't necessarily a great move either, because he would still have about $3 million in dead money this year if he was a post June 1st cut. Which if they're going to release him, that's the way they have to do it. Because if they do a post or a pre-June 1st cut or a pre-June 1st designation, they're only going to save about $1.8 million on the cap, whereas there will be like $7.3 million in dead money on this year's cap. Not to mention if he's got any more guarantees left on 2019 or 2020.
Yeah. So let's talk about DeMarcus Lawrence, because DeMarcus Lawrence had a breakout season this past year, and he's looking to get paid, but it doesn't seem, I don't know how feasible it seems that the Cowboys work something out during free agency with DeMarcus Lawrence that is going to work for both them and DeMarcus Lawrence, because I believe his agent is the same agent as Olivier Vernon in New York, and I believe that he's going to want to get DeMarcus Lawrence paid as much as he possibly can. So the Cowboys might end up having to franchise tag him. Now, if they franchise tag DeMarcus Lawrence, you said the Cowboys had $19 million in cap space. Doesn't that take a big chunk off of that? Or are we just worrying about nothing? The Cowboys could do other things to get some relief there.
Again, I feel like, because contracts are so flexible in this era of the salary cap, there's ways they can create room. And kind of pay this year's bills with next year's money. One idea I had recently was that if you look at overthecap.com, they're projecting that Dallas' salary cap figure for their free space in 2019 will be around $60 million, which, even though they don't have a ton of room to get guaranteed money under the cap this year, if you're just looking at $19 million, they could give him a smaller guarantee for this year and put a lot of his guaranteed money into the 2019 cap, so that they're not having to eat the brunt of his big contract, because he's going to get paid.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the top 5 salaries now, you're talking about at least around $15 million for the franchise tag, which I think is the best option for them moving forward, because you don't want him to get to the market and then have the market bid his number up, because there's teams out there like the Niners and the Browns who have close to $100 million or more than $100 million in salary cap space. And so they could push his number up to $20 million a year because everybody needs pass rushers.
Yeah. So do you think, now ultimately, do you think that this year they're just going to franchise tag him, or do you believe they're going to try and get that deal in place where they can push some money on to the next season and just pay him minimal this year and push money on to the next couple of years of his deal? Or how do you see it working out with DeMarcus Lawrence there? Because I don't believe the Cowboys are letting him go at all.
Yeah, me neither. I think the franchise tag is more going to be just a placeholder for him. It's not going to be he's not going to play this year on the franchise tag unless he just decides that's what he wants to do. but all things that we're hearing is that he wants to be in Dallas for the long term. And so there's going to be motivation on both sides to get a long-term contract done.
Yeah. See, I agree with that. So basically what we're saying here is that DeMarcus Lawrence will be on the franchise tag to open up the season, and then the Cowboys will work all the way through until training camp or however long it takes to get him on a long-term deal before the season starts, so he doesn't actually have to play on that franchise tag. Am I reading you correctly?
Yeah, that's the way I see it's going to happen. I mean, they could let him get to free agency and see what the market is for him, but I think the market's going to be Olivier Vernon or more.
Yeah.
Which, his contract is like $17 million per year. You're looking at DeMarcus Lawrence, who's 25 years old, so you're going to get his prime years if you sign him to a 5-year contract. But Dallas isn't going to want to do that, and so the franchise tag is just their way, I think, of keeping the market in their ballpark.
Yeah, so let's move on and talk about some other possibilities of getting some cap space for the Cowboys. What are there any other guys on the team that you think that they should go and look at their deals and possibly restructure or get a little bit of money from that doesn't necessarily make you worried about kicking the can to the next year?
Yeah, Jason Witten's actually an interesting contract to look at because he received all his guarantee up front last year. And so if you actually were to come up with an arrangement with him and his representation, you could actually release him and not suffer any cap penalty, if I'm reading the numbers right. And so you could bring him back at a smaller number if you were to give the team a team-friendly deal, kind of like Dirk Nowitzki might do for the Dallas Mavericks. Because right now his figure's at $6 million, which, for Jason Witten in his prime, that's a bargain. But I think what we're seeing is Jason Witten, he's slowing down. He's a great player. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. I think a first ballot Hall of Famer. But at some point, you have to start managing the cap based on what you're getting out of your players now. He's one guy I'd look at. One that would be kind of a tough loss, but somebody that you have to really look hard at is Cole Beasley as well. I know he's a really popular player with Cowboys Nation, and he's been a great asset to the team. But you have to wonder, was his 2016 kind of the aberration in his production? Because his 2017 looked a lot like his pre-2016 numbers than it did like a guy that was beginning to escalate and show off that he was one of the better slot receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, but doesn't that have a lot to do with the fact that I said in our last episode, you might not have heard when I was talking to Tom Ryle from BTB, that Cole Beasley was bracketed a lot this year, and also I don't think that Dak Prescott really trusted many receivers that he had outside of Dez Bryant and Cole Beasley, and Cole Beasley was kind of one of those guys that teams really decided to take away, which kind of makes you a little bit more upset about the way Dez Bryant's season ended, because in that case, if a team is giving you Dez Bryant, you should be able to just destroy them with Dez, and they weren't able to do so. And I believe that Cole Beasley was kind of, when other teams took Cole Beasley out of the game, it really affected Dak Prescott. So getting rid of Cole Beasley, I don't know if that's what, if you're suggesting that, do you believe that that would be the right move? Do you think that Ryan Switzer's ready to take that step into that role?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the right move, but if you're looking at trying to free up some money, you can get $3.5 million back on his deal, with only $1 million going dead on the cap. Now, he's in the last year of his contract. He's an aging player. I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying that's a contract that they have to look at. It would not be an easy release to make because, again, we saw in 2016 that he was a legit number 2 wide receiver for your team playing out of the slot. But at some point, you have to begin kind of making the way for the younger players, and that's a lot of what the Dallas Cowboys have done over the last several years in the Jason Garrett era, is kind of move on from older guys and allow younger guys to kind of step into those roles.
Let's talk about two of the offensive linemen, Tyron Smith and Travis Frederick. Do you believe that the Cowboys will go to them and try to, hit? I know that they have their contract structured in a way where it's almost like hitting a button and restructuring the contract to be able to get a little bit more money under the cap. Do you believe that they should go to both guys? Do you believe that it might be a dangerous thing to start restructuring Tyron Smith's deal with all of the kind of nicks and bruises he's suffered over the past couple of years? Or do you think that Tyron Smith is probably still one of the best in the league and that he's going to be fine if he just takes care of his body going forward, and they should be able to still go to him or Travis Frederick and get a little bit of money there to get under the cap a little bit more if they wanted to sign some second-tier free agents or something of that nature?
Yeah, Travis is to me would be a no-brainer to go ahead and restructure. I mean, he's going to be 27. He's got maybe, I think, 6 years left on his deal. But we've seen centers play, well into their 30s and still play at an all-pro level. And he's a guy that's not going anywhere. He's going to be on the team. And it doesn't look like his production and his ability is dropping off at all. And so that's a guy that I would definitely look at restructuring, because you're going to be able to save $7 million on the 2018 cap, which that could be potentially Earl Thomas if he were to hit free agency. You might be able to get him for $7, $8, $9 million a year. And so to me, that's a no-brainer. Tyron Smith is definitely a question mark to me, not because of the ability, not because of the talent, but because of the nicks and bruises, like you just mentioned. I mean, back injuries, they don't necessarily go away. And your back, when you start having back issues, I've seen it in the medical field, people continue to have back issues. That doesn't mean he can't still be a really productive player and continue to be an all-pro player, but he just has more risk to him at this point in his career.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really don't like the idea of going to Tyron Smith and trying to kick that can a little further down, but I think that they will, just because I think that they have confidence in Tyron Smith. I also agree with you there with Travis Frederick. Travis Frederick he's shown to be everything that they wanted in a center. He's going to be there for quite some time, and he's going to do just fine. I think that they could go there for that. Now, before we take a quick break, let's talk about a couple of guys that you were talking about releasing. You already mentioned Cole Beasley. You kind of mentioned Jason Witten there, but I don't think that ends up happening just because of Jason Witten and how long he's been with the team. I just don't see that they're going to ask him to release him just to bring him back on a lower deal. Maybe he might take a pay cut, maybe something like that. But a guy that a couple.
Yeah, to me that would be.
Go ahead.
To me, that would be like a handshake deal. Like,
yeah.
Hey, we're not really releasing you. It's just more let's figure out a way to better the team through the salary cap.
Yeah, a handshake and a wink. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
So, you mentioned Benson Mayowa. He's a decent depth player, but nothing too special. Do you think the Cowboys should go ahead and move on from him this offseason and maybe try to get younger guys there? It's not that he's old, but maybe go into not necessarily free agency, but draft a guy in the mid rounds or something that could do what Benson Mayowa does for him.
Yeah, I think you need to free up snaps for Taco Charlton. If you need to see what your first round pick from 2016 was, or 2017, sorry. You've got DeMarcus Lawrence that's going to be playing the left side. Tyrone Crawford, if you bring him back, he's going to be playing right defensive end a lot still. And so if you have Benson Mayowa, all he's doing is taking snaps from Taco Charlton.
And
so I think it's time to move on.
Yeah. I think you're correct there. And you also talked about James Hanna too. I think James Hanna's a good blocking tight end, but I think you're correct in your assessment that you can find another guy like that out there.
Yeah, and that one hits home with me. I'm a Sooner fan by marriage, and I'm a big fan of James Hanna from his time there in Oklahoma, and I thought he could be a pretty good pro. He's got a good, well-rounded ability, but at this point, you can find what he can do through who you've got on the team. And again, if we want to see what Rico Gathers has, you need to have those training camp and preseason snaps freed up for somebody like him. And, they talk about progress stoppers, and James Hanna, he could potentially be that if Rico Gathers or another tight end that they might draft. If you want to get them snaps, and you gotta make way for that.
And real quickly before we take our commercial break, I want you to talk about Orlando Scandrick. I think Orlando Scandrick's kind of a polarizing player. There was talks of them trying to trade him during the draft last season. Do you believe that it's time for the Cowboys, with the youth movement they have in the secondary, to possibly move on from Orlando Scandrick, who has been definitely hasn't been his healthiest over the last 3 seasons or so? Maybe it's time for the Cowboys to look to get a lot younger there and let Orlando Scandrick go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's time, and again, another popular player for the Dallas Cowboys and for Cowboys Nation. And you have to just look at what they're doing for you and look at their contract and figure out, like, is it matching up? And at this point, Orlando Scandrick's just not that. And I know he was dealing with some injury issues, and I was even critical of him at times over the course of 2017. But given that, he's going to cost you, he's going to save you $4 million on the cap if you designate him a post June 1st cut. Then you're only going to then that's some money that you have to work with in free agency. Great guy, good teammate. He worked hard and went from a 5th round pick to being one of the better players on the team and pushing the 1st round pick off the roster. And when Morris Claiborne was allowed to let go, he took starting jobs from people that nobody really expected him to, and he's been a great story for the Dallas Cowboys. But we've reached that time where it's time to move on.
Yep. I agree with you. And we are going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk to John about some possible free agent moves that the Cowboys could make in the coming months. We'll be right back on the Brews and the Boys podcast.
Today's episode of Brews and the Boys is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/brewsandtheboys. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
We talked about this on our last podcast with Tom Ryle too, about how it would just seem crazy if the Cowboys were going to let that kind of production walk out the window. So what do you potentially see happening with David Irving, and what do you make of Stephen Jones's comments about David Irving and what is going on at this point in time? How would you handle the David Irving situation going forward?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of really good discussion of this, and I felt like Bob Sturm had a really good article with The Athletic today, just highlighting just who he is as a player. And he's a wrecking ball, man. You can't let that guy walk. You just can't do it. And I think a lot of what we're hearing from Stephen Jones, there may be some truth to who he's been for the Dallas Cowboys and kind of what kind of a person he's been, what kind of teammate, and but there's no denying the player that he is. I mean, he's going to be a guy that's 6 to 10 sacks a season. And so while he might be a headache, and while he might be somebody that you have to kind of baby a little bit, again, you can't let that guy go. I don't know exactly what they're going to do. We've seen speculation that they'll put the 2nd round tender on him.
Well, I'm gonna stop you right there, John. If they put the 2nd round tender on him, he's gone. Somebody's coming to give you that. They will give you a 2nd round pick for David Irving. I just don't believe that there's any way the Cowboys can keep him at a 2nd round tender. If you give him that, wouldn't you think that some team would say, hey, I can get production out of that for a 2nd round pick? That's good enough. If you say the guy's a 6 to 10 sack guy here, and I totally believe you because I think you're a smart Cowboys guy, I just think, wouldn't that be kind of a little bit what you're getting for that, a 2nd round pick? What's that really going to get you that David Irving can't do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. To me, the only reason they do that is if they want the free agent market to set his price, because they're still going to have the ability to match whatever contract he gets or whatever offer sheet he signs. They don't have to let him walk. Now, knowing this organization and knowing this franchise over the last 10 years, they might just let him walk. We would kill them on all of our sites and over social media if they were to do that. I mean, the smart thing to do, and I think like Joey Ikes and other people have mentioned it, is putting the 1st round tender on them, because then it makes it a lot less palatable for teams to sign him to an offer sheet if they're going to have to get rid of a 1st round pick. Unless you're talking about somebody that's like drafting 25 to 32 in the draft, they're not going to want to do that, because again, it's a 25-year-old guy who may have some baggage coming with him. But yeah, I think this is kind of Dallas just playing chicken, either with Irving or with the rest of the NFL. To me, it just seems like a lot of posturing that's being put out into the media. I believe what they say about him, but I also think they're just putting it out there to kind of drive the price down a little bit. And the team, again, I would worry about is Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland could look at his production and look at his ability, say, we've got more than $100 million in cap room. We'll sign him to whatever contract we want to. But again, it would be a mistake to let him walk. And I think, again, like you said, putting the second round tender on him is kind of a risky move. It's Jerry at the poker table playing Texas Hold'em.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a great analogy there. And we know Jerry, he likes to play Texas Hold'em with almost everything. He's like, you know what, Steven, get your hands off me. I can handle this. But I do really think that it would be kind of a bad idea to do that. Like you were saying, I agree with you there. I think the Cowboys should definitely try to get something worked out with David Irving because he's important to their team. You just got your pass rush working with DeMarcus Lawrence and David Irving, and I think right there you have two cataclysmic type of players that can really destroy an offense's ability to consistently move the ball on your defense. But let's move on to another defensive player that we need to talk about, and that is Anthony Hitchens. I know Anthony Hitchens is kind of a favorite of Cowboys Nation, but he's a good linebacker. I wouldn't say he's a great linebacker. He's a great insurance policy for the fact that you have sometimes missed time with Sean Lee, and you're bringing along Jalen Smith here. But do you think that the Cowboys should really go after an Anthony Hitchens, or do you think he's going to get more money than they really want to pay and that they should look to possibly move on and find a linebacker that may be better than Anthony Hitchens in the draft, or possibly in free agency find somewhere to recoup that loss with a guy that can give them starts if they need it?
Yeah, I think they need to probably just set their number. And, if kind of like what they did with Terrence Williams, if he's willing to come back at this number, we're happy to have you back. Although the Terrence Williams contract is kind of looking bad right now.
Yeah.
But if you decide that Anthony Hitchens is worth $5 million a year, to me that's worth it. Bring him back because again, like you said, he's a very important insurance policy. Sean Lee's 32. I mean, we had a great 2016 out of him. He was an All-Pro, but again, 2017, Sean Lee fell back into Sean Lee, and you don't become less injury prone as you get older. Not to say that he's an injury prone player, but he's just had really bad luck with injuries. They may be able to find somebody else in the draft. I mean, it seems like a decent linebacker class in the first couple rounds. But I was listening to the draft show a couple weeks ago, and aside from Roquan Smith and Tremaine Edmonds, Broadus and Hellman and Brugler, they were worried about the depth of the class at linebacker. And so you might be able to find a decent middle round linebacker like Anthony Hitchens was, like a Josie Jewell. Might be somebody that you look at in the middle rounds. But again, you're gambling. You're hoping that person falls to the right spot, or you're trading assets to make sure you get the guy that you're looking for. But Anthony Hitchens, again, if he's willing to come back at a number that works for them, I'd be very happy to bring him back. Again, like you said, he's not a great player, but he's a good player. He's a role player that can help you win a championship.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I think that with Anthony Hitchens, he was on the field for some of the parts of the season that the Cowboys would like to forget, but he was on the field for some of the parts of the season the Cowboys needed him there for. I think he's definitely a good insurance policy. I think he can start games as middle linebacker if you need him to. I think there are a couple of guys in free agency that are interesting and that might a linebacker you might look for and stuff possibly around free agency. There could be a couple that will be making their way to free agency, but are they going to cost more than Anthony Hitchens? Possibly, possibly not. It just depends on what you pay for that production. But I do want to talk to you about outside free agents, not guys that are inside the Cowboys star right now. Let's talk about some guys that you're looking outside for, and you think that might make sense for the Cowboys to go after one way or another. Let's play here. Let's not even act as if we're Stephen Jones or something. You can be realistic. But let's see what you think here. What are some free agents that you're looking at that you think, man, that guy put a star on his helmet and he could really help this team get to the next step?
Well, if I wasn't being realistic about it, I would say you need to go after Paul Richardson, the wide receiver from Seattle. The dude's got 4.4 speed. He's got great hands. He's a playmaker. He averaged more than 15 yards per catch this past season. He was Russell Wilson's broken play outlet, so to speak. But I just think he's going to cost too much for Dallas. So he's kind of outside of my realm of realistic possibilities for the team. But looking at guys who I think fit more Dallas's MO in free agency, the first one is Star Lotulelei from the Carolina Panthers. One, it just fits that his first name is Star, I think. But second, I mean, he's a one tech that this team needs. I mean, I know they're trying to kind of pigeonhole Malik Collins into that role, and he was serviceable. He played really well as a one tech. He took up, he made people double him, and he got penetration when necessary. But I think he's still best served as a three tech. And so if you can bring a guy in like Star, who has averaged 2 sacks a season over his career, has been a really disruptive player, and while he fell off in 2017. New York Giants general manager Dave Gettleman, who was with the Carolina Panthers, he picked up his 5th-year option before 2016 season, and allowed him to finish out his rookie contract. And so I think he could be a really good player for the Dallas Cowboys. And again, they need a one tech. They need a legit run stuffing, taking up space, moving bodies one tech. And he's been really healthy. He's only missed 4 games in his career, and he's played every single game in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I actually wrote about Star Lotulelei on Blogging the Boys. I do think that the Cowboys need a one-tech defensive tackle. It's going to be – you're going to have to go to Rod Marinelli, and you're going to have to go to the defensive guys and say you need to start valuing guys that don't necessarily have gap flexibility or scheme flexibility, but they're just really good at their job. Can we just get guys that are good at doing what they do? I don't care if the guy can flip over to the defensive end if you need him to for this certain play. No, I want a fat guy who eats Whataburger every day, who takes up space, and I want a guy that crushes rushing lanes. I want him to destroy pockets and let other guys get free to make those plays. That's what you're going to be paying DeMarcus Lawrence for. That's what you're going to be paying David Irving for. That's what you're possibly going to be paying Malik Collins as a 3-tech for in the future. I just don't think that this team values a one tech, but they should. And if they don't get a Star Lotulelei, maybe they look to the draft for a Vita Vea type if they can get him. But definitely, I'm with you on that. Star Lotulelei, maybe even if they don't want to pay for Star Lotulelei, even though I don't think he's going to be that expensive. Bo Allen from the Eagles sounds like a good plan too as a one technique defensive tackle. They really just need to get better there.
Yeah, and they need to stop letting Rod Marinelli dictate how they draft or sign defensive linemen. Because I think we've got just a bunch of the same guys, a bunch of guys who are about 6'3", 6'4", who are long and tall and strong.
Yeah, but you know what? You see them last year, and you say, Malik Collins did a good enough job, but good enough wasn't always good enough in the run defense. And David Irving is a little light in the behind there, so he's a good defensive tackle, penetrating 3-tech. But I would much rather have Malik Collins and David Irving wrecking shop as the 2 3-techs and get me a fat guy who eats Whataburger in the middle right there at the 1 and let him destroy running backs' lives and let him destroy pockets and other guys get free and make the play.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second guy that I've been really kind of turned on to, this is more by Brian Martin, one of the staff writers at Inside the Star, is Trey Boston. He's a safety from the Chargers. He was another Carolina guy who was released after the 2016 season, a former 4th-round draft pick. But he had a really, really strong year and a really good playmaking year last year for the Chargers. He had 5 interceptions, he had 8 passes defended, 70-plus tackles. And the thing that Brian mentioned that I really, really like is that he's that deep center field safety, which, again, allows for my hope to potentially come to fruition, is that they move Byron Jones back to the cornerback position. And so that's another guy that I've been really, really interested in doing. He's got 25 starts in him the last couple of years. And again, he plays that single high spot that I think that they're missing. They don't have that guy that they're willing to allow to just kind of range over the middle third.
Yeah, you're so correct, and I feel like you've been reading my mind because I wrote about Trey Boston over at Blogging the Boys too a few maybe about a month ago or so. Trey Boston is my guy that I want in free agency more than anybody because, like you said, I think that with Chris Richard coming here, I think he's going to move Byron Jones down to cornerback with that long corner, and you need a guy that can play free safety, that can really be your last line of defense, but a guy that makes plays on the ball and gets interceptions or knocks passes down, and I think that's Trey Boston all the way. I think he played really well for the Chargers this past year. I think the guy is trending upwards. He's very young. He's a good player, and I think he could really help the Cowboys defense on the back end. We know that they went after Eric Weddle a couple of years ago, and he was well into his 30s, and they were willing to get upwards of that close to that $10 million a year range, but they decided to not pay the actual 10.5 or something that he was going to get. But so if you're going to go after that guy, why not go after a younger guy who is in the midst of the best time of his career? He's in his prime and he's playing well. I think Trey Boston would be a great acquisition for the Cowboys on the defense that would allow them to go into the draft feeling like we have covered some good spots here, and let's say they went with our plan here and got Star Lotulelei and Trey Boston. I mean, I would be jumping for joy.
Yeah, their defense would be pretty much ready to contend. I mean,
yeah.
They still need a speed rusher to put on the other side of Lawrence, but they're pretty much ready to go on defense, especially if they can retain Anthony Hitchens or draft a linebacker at 19. But yeah, that defense would be pretty formidable, and they'd finally maybe have a playmaker in the back end that could get the turnovers that they've been lacking.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add possibly to your free agent wish list is maybe going after a wide receiver with speed. You can't really go, like you said, you can't really go after Paul Richardson. He's going to cost way too much. But maybe you go for a guy that's kind of had a down year or two. John Brown from the Arizona Cardinals seems like a good get there, a guy that gets separation, that Dak Prescott could get the ball out to quickly. Somebody that on the lower end there that's not going to cost you a lot of money, but if they pan out, it would be a good move for the Cowboys there, and you wouldn't have to put too much resources into that. But I do think the Cowboys are going to spend a lot of resources in the draft on their offense. I just think that they really know that that's their bread and butter. That's their ticket to the championship. And we saw in this Super Bowl that offense wins championships. Because the defense didn't show up until the last second. But I definitely think that the Cowboys have a lot of moves that they can make in free agency. And John, we really appreciate you coming on today and telling us about that. Do you have any last words about possible free agents that you would pick up before we let you out of here today?
Yeah, the wide receiver that I was thinking of was Dante Moncrief, a guy coming off a couple down years. His last good year was in 2015 with luck and the 40-year-old Matt Hasselbeck.
He worked with Sanjay Lal, didn't he? Wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So we got that connection working for us, and again, a guy with 4.4 speed, and he's not gonna cost you big. My hope is that Sanjay can convince him to come here on like a 1-year prove it or with a team option for a second year kind of a thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here today. Brews and the Boys fans, we want to thank John Williams. You can find him on Twitter at John9Williams. And you can find his work at Inside the Star DC. You still do some stuff for Slant Sports as well, correct?
Yeah, every once in a while I'll write some fantasy football stuff and put on over there, or college football. Just kind of depends. And
you got any other shameless plugs that you want us to put in there?
No, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, we'll have you on again later, and we'll talk about free agency. We'll bring John back to you guys to talk about how the Cowboys do after free agency has kind of concluded for them. Thank you again, John, and we want to thank the Brews and the Boys fans for showing up again another week. We will have another episode coming out this week as well, where we will talk to Tom Ryle again from BTB. So, once again, we just want to thank John Williams. You can find him on Twitter at John9Williams. Find him over at InsideTheStar.com. Some things over at Slant Sports as well. And Brews and the Boys Nation, like we always tell you, all it takes to be an expert in the Cowboys is a lot of passion and just a little bit of some cold beverage. So, take care, guys.
Casting.